Hi, everyone, and I'm delighted to be back again in our amazing International Women's Day Extraordinary Everyday Women series that has really garnered so much appreciation and input. And today I'm here with the simply amazing, that's my view, Melanie Richards. Melanie's gonna describe herself and what she's done, but I have found her in her various positions, not least before her new chapter that she's moved into as the vice chair of KPMG. One of the most supportive mentors, one of the most inspirational women, and someone who always makes time in the most authentic way for other women. So Melanie, tell us a little bit about what you're up to, what you're doing, and then we'll get into our questions.
So I think, well, first of all, thanks so much for including me. I have watched some of these videos, so it's quite daunting, irrespective of your very, very kind words about me. You always wonder how interesting you're going to be, but hopefully we'll have I'm looking forward to a good conversation, which we always have. Probably the best place to start is a little bit about me, so people kind of get a sense of who I am. And in no particular order, but first and foremost, I'm a mum. So I have two boys who are now in their 20s, which means I've been around for quite some time. As you alluded to, I've already been working for kind of nearly 40 years and recently stepped down as deputy chair of KPMG. A very conscious decision to move into a new chapter where I'm looking forward, not that I didn't love doing one thing, but I'm looking forward to doing a broader variety of things and supporting, and at its heart, probably spending a lot of that time supporting women and supporting those maybe who are most disadvantaged get to where they need to get to, which has been a constant theme of kind of my career. Just also very briefly, things that people find a bit surprising about me. I didn't go to university. So if you were trying to do the maths on how old can she be, I actually started work at 18 and that was a very conscious decision. I'm a product of Wales post-miners' strikes, which many people listening to this won't even remember maybe. But from an economic perspective, it did huge damage to the UK economy. And we, as had previous governments, and therefore I came out at a time from school when, you know, getting jobs wasn't easy. And I figured, I think two things. One is I wanted to get on and get into the world of work. And the second was I was impatient to be contributing in some way. And you can imagine the interesting conversations I had with my own children about the merits of going to university when the time came. So, and I guess the other thing about me is I used to be a banker many years ago. So about half my career was in banking, and then I moved to KPMG to kind of help companies raise capital. And so, and then at its core, probably in the last 15 years, which is I think how we originally may have met, was working in and around and supporting the progression of women, which, you know, started with inside KPMG and then sort of went outside with kind of working on the establishment of the 30% Club with Helena Morrissey and a number of other very talented women to establish the 30% Club to push to get more women in the boardroom, which I'm glad to say has been very significantly successful in the UK. And then pushing further into the executive layer. And pushing for more women in the executive layer, but also working on something that I firmly believe in, which is how do we make sure that we level up, the great phrase that's being used now, but one that I think absolutely describes what we need to be doing as a society and as a globe, actually.
Yes.
So I'll stop there.
Fabulous. Thank you, Melanie. And we've been asking all of the extraordinary women who've given their time on this little series about a challenge that you may have experienced or a couple of challenges and how you have overcome them yourself.
So I worried about this when I worried about it when I thought about, well, how would I answer this question? Because, you know, you don't want to dismiss that there were challenges, but I think one of the great things early on in my career was, I think I was a bit oblivious to the fact that there were challenges. And in some ways, I now wonder whether it was subconsciously denying that those things were happening because it made it easier to deal with. So some of what I'm about to describe is more with the benefit of hindsight than actually sort of having sat in the middle of the situation and thought, oh gosh, this is so unjust and unfair, which, by the way, I think really helped at the time. And it's going to probably, it may surprise you. But what's really difficult when we do these things on screen is you don't get a sense of the size of the person. You might get a sense of the size of their personality, but I'm very, very petite. I am, you know, amongst people, you know, people say they're petite, but if I'm 5 foot, we're lucky, right? And I worked in a very, very, very early on, very male dominated environment. And as you probably know, when they do studies of leadership, and let's face it, Harriet, you're not exactly a giant yourself. But when they do studies of leadership, they have actually demonstrated that height is a factor in people's perceptions of whether somebody is a leader. And I think luckily I was probably a little bit less conscious of it. But when I became really aware of it was when I started walking into boardrooms as an advisor, as the person who was there to give the advice, and discovering that people turn to people who are taller than me instinctively. Often taller than me and male, but bigger people. And one of the things I had to learn was, and I did do this consciously, was you are as big as the space you fill. And you and I, you know, you must have had these conversations, particularly with talented people who kind of hide their light under a bushel. They fail to understand that even the position they put themselves in the room before they've even started, or the way they walk into the room. And I hasten to add, this isn't arrogance and, you know, making oneself bigger than you are. But if you make yourself, I think the better way to think about it is if you make yourself small, you'll be treated like a small person. And so I hope it doesn't sound like too trite a thing to describe. But actually, I think it's actually a really important thing that people understand that it's not just what you say, it's how you say it.
Oh, I completely agree, Melanie. And as someone who is very petite, you fill an enormous space through both your warmth and the gravitas of what you have to say. But you're so right about where you position yourself, how you position yourself. Those are great inputs. And any other challenges you'd reference, or shall we go into that question that women have found so hard to answer about what they are most proud of in their list of achievements?
So I think the only one thing I would add is, and this sounds like I've stopped thinking, but I used to overthink everything. And it took me a long, long time. And sometimes that would manifest itself in sort of catastrophization. So, you know, that sort of, you know, you start thinking about something and then you end up over here, and you sort of have to remind yourself why you've ended up over here in the kind of worst scenario. And so I was reading a HBR article, and forgive me because I can't remember who wrote it, but it was a very good article. And the phrase that they used was calibrate, don't catastrophize, which is now a mantra that I kind of keep in my head. And fortunately, the catastrophizing has reduced the older I've got, and hopefully the slightly wiser. But if I look back, as you've described, on things that I've learned, I think that calibrating and not catastrophizing, you know, 9 times out of 10, it's never quite as bad as you think it's going to be. Whether it's dealing with the confrontation that, you know, somebody has come to you with, or whatever else. And I think having that little mantra in my head has helped enormously.
Yes, very, very good advice. And I've learned that from you as someone who lost a parent early. I always think the worst in a sense, and kind of plan and hope for the best. But I think we're conditioned, you know, very early on. But tell us a little bit. You have such a huge array of achievements, and like pretty much every woman I know, you don't really like talking about them. But I would love you to pick one or two that you are most proud of yourself, Melanie.
Well, as you know, as you've just referenced before we came on air, I would have paid you any amount of money not to have to answer this question. But it's and the reason it's so difficult is, and I'm not just saying this, is one's achievements are never one's alone. You know, there's always been some sort of collective effort, and when, even when one gets singled out for something that you've done, I always get, I think the reason I get most uncomfortable is because you've never done it on your own. You've never done it on your own, whether it's the fact that I've had the career I have, and actually one of the people I'd give credit to that is my own husband, right, who wasn't in the office every day with me, but by goodness, you know, and you know, the roller coaster that is a 39-year career so far, and hopefully so far as I move into my next chapter, you know, you kind of have these people around you in your ecosystem. So that's why I know that isn't the question you asked, but I think that's why I find it so difficult. So in an attempt to answer your questions, and with everybody on this line having that in mind, first and foremost, that I don't see this as a solo effort, if we can put it that way. I guess being involved in a movement, and I would call it a movement, that pushed as hard as we did to get more women in the boardroom, has been both a privilege, great fun. I've made some fantastic friends along the way. But when I think about the first conversation that I certainly had as we were thinking about, should we start some sort of the 30% club? And then of course the Davis review was running alongside, and the Hampton Alexander review. Being part of that ecosystem and playing a part in driving that agenda is a big deal, right? And so I see that as an achievement. You know, we've done, you know, there's some great numbers and stats in terms of the number of women in boardroom in the UK. But the interesting thing is it can't stop, because we haven't reached the destination yet. The destination is, and I know it sounds crass and everyone says it, it is when we're not having this conversation about 50% of the population. So do I feel really, really proud of that? Sure, I feel proud of having been part of that. And I feel proud about continuing to be part of it. But as I say, not a solo event. The other achievement, which has nothing to do with work, although, you know, I love, there are so many things, achievements as in, you know, I can think of all of the people that I've worked with and coached informally. I take as much pleasure out of their achievements as I do my own, and there are many, and they are their achievements, but if I've played a little bit of a part on the way through, I get as much joy out of that as anything. But the other big achievement isn't anything to do with work, and it's my boys, right? You know, and this has been a very special time. I mean, look, some people have had awful pandemics, and I can't say I'm loving being locked up, and I'd much rather be doing this in person. But I do think that, you know, I feel very blessed that I did manage to produce two boys. My husband played some sort of part, but he played a role. But I'm thrilled with that, and I'm thrilled with having been able to spend more time with them and see them as young adults developing and so forth. So yeah, I mean, it would be, if I were to write down my achievements, you didn't say work ones, that's a big one.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. I think so many people will take so much from this, and I always see you as a deeply kind, deeply supportive, real rock star for women. So Melanie Richards, thank you so much for your time and inputs today.
Thank you very much for inviting me and making it so easy as ever. Thanks.